May 25th, 1977 saw the release of George Lucas's Star Wars, which quickly became a surprise blockbuster hit. Often regarded as one of the greatest and most influential movies ever made, it helped change the way movies were made and captured the imagination of a generation. Star Wars quickly became a pop culture phenomenon. Over the course of this series, I will be joined by a number of Star Wars fans from across YouTube and the toy collecting community, as we take a look back at their earliest memories of Star Wars and find out what made Star Wars great. Hello, Toy Collector fans, Universal Toy Collector here, and welcome to the channel. And welcome to episode 10 of What Made Star Wars Great, the series where I get to speak to Star Wars fans from across the YouTube toy collecting community about their first experiences with Star Wars, and also to basically find out what made Star Wars great. And this week, we have an awesome guest with a special guest. It's Brett on Fett and Thea. Hello, how are you, sir?
Hey Stu, doing great. Yeah, that's the debut of my dog
No,
in
it's all good, man.
any video. As we talked about, I'm home alone, and she's a puppy, and she wanted attention. So
No, that's fine.
the
That's
only way
fine. It's
we
all
could
good.
continue on is for her to join us. So
Oh yeah, yeah, no, no,
yeah,
no,
there
no
goes.
problem at all. The more the merrier. Awesome stuff. And maybe she could have a say on what she thinks of Star Wars as well at the end. So yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
So the reason I'm doing this series is because basically, I mean, I grew up with Star Wars. Star Wars has been with me for 40 odd years. It's been like that with a lot of people like my generation. There's also been a lot of negativity surrounding Star Wars. Some people agree with that negativity. Other people, they don't agree with it. I just wondered what your take was on the negativity with Star Wars. Is it just?
I think it's a little bit over the top.
Yeah,
I think yes, some criticism is just, but I think people tend to take it to a level that's a little bit unnecessary.
yeah,
Um, As people just get a little bit too dramatic, and I think people kind of go in watching something already kind of with an idea of what it's going to be, and
yeah,
they kind of want it to uh, fulfill that opinion, and maybe don't keep such an open mind. Um, that being said, a lot of the criticism is just, so it just depends. People just need to. Kinda take everything with a grain of salt that they hear online
yeah.
and just think about
I mean,
who's
I
yeah.
for me personally, I don't agree with the over the top criticism. I think you know, if something's bad, I think people are free to say it's bad and have an opinion that they don't like it for reasons like, so like I don't know, poor storytelling, poor acting, poor direction, um, poor overall production, and that could be across any form of Star Wars. I don't have a problem with that. What the problem for me is when you have an opinion that you don't like it for one reason or another, and you get people that do like it criticizing those people that don't like it, and that's where the toxic stuff, toxic side of things shows. And I don't agree with that. I think people are well within their right to have an opinion. And look, listen, for me, people like Star Wars. That's great. There's a lot of Star Wars. People are free to like whatever they want to like, and I don't feel that you're any less of a fan because you don't like a certain part of Star Wars. Or do you know what I mean? Do you agree with that?
Definitely, no, definitely totally agree. There's definitely been a side that has attacked the criticism, for some of these shows, and it's just completely ridiculous, some of the opinions they're taking on the people that have their opinions. Everyone's welcome to their opinion, and you just,
Yeah,
you know, don't, you just don't need to poo-poo on someone's opinion, just because you liked it. You
yeah,
disagree. So,
yeah. I mean, it's
um,
it's about respecting the opinions, isn't it? I mean, that's
yeah,
basically what it's about. We can't like everything because it's like I say, it just gets boring if we all like the same thing and everybody's in that same thought process. And the world doesn't work like that. The world doesn't work like that at all. And look, listen, I think if it's fair criticism, I don't have a problem with that. I don't like the racial side of things. I don't like the idiots, but then you get the idiots on both sides of the coin. So rational fans. That's what we want. We want rational thinking people.
yeah,
I don't have a problem with those. But
yeah,
anyhow,
maybe. Rational
Yeah,
may
sorry.
be a big ask. I was gonna say rational may be a big ask these days too.
This day and age, it's asking a lot for people to have a
Yeah.
rational thought process and stuff like that, or just be a rational person. But look, listen, we're here to talk about the good stuff about Star Wars. So, what are your earliest memories of Star Wars?
So my earliest memories, it's funny. I remember the first time I remember seeing any Star Wars was actually at my neighbor's house when they got a VHS, or maybe it was a Beta Max, or whatever it was called back then,
Yeah,
video player, at home, which we thought was amazing. Like that just kind of blew our minds. You could, play a tape and watch something. And so that was the first time I saw Star Wars. It was just the original Star Wars. We just called it Star Wars back then.
yeah,
We didn't call it A New Hope. I don't think they had added the name at that point. Maybe they had. I can't remember. But I do remember sitting in my neighbor's living room on the floor and watching that, and being pretty blown away on the TV. But then, and that was probably, maybe 82, somewhere around that time. It was,
yeah,
I think it was after Empire had come out, but I was too young to remember seeing Empire when it debuted in theaters,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
would have been about, I guess I was about 4 years old. But then what I do, my earliest memory of seeing Star Wars in the theater was actually Empire Strikes Back, because where I lived, they re-released it just before
Oh,
Return of the
okay.
Jedi came out.
Yeah,
And I remember going to a mall very close to where I live and watching Empire Strikes Back and
yeah,
just being absolutely floored with what I saw on the big screen. It was just a different experience, of course. And then
yeah, yeah,
and I just really liked Empire. I liked it at the time, probably quite a bit better than the first one. I was just blown away by. I just remember the AT-ATs and Yoda and the bounty hunters and all of that. I was just like a kid in a candy store
yeah,
with that. And then it was just probably months. I want to say they probably re-released that in like the spring
yeah,
of probably 83. And then because I remember it was just a few months later that Return of the Jedi came out. So you can imagine how awesome that was for me, seeing Empire
yeah,
for the
yeah,
first time and then not having to wait 3 years or whatever to see the
yeah,
sequel. It
yeah.
was only
True,
waiting a matter
true.
of months. So I really vividly remember seeing Jedi as well and just loving that to death also. So that was a great, I'd say 83 when I was, 6 years old. It was
Wow.
just a wonderful time. And then
Yeah,
and then Christmas followed, and that's when all the Jedi stuff came. And that's when I got my first Star Wars toys. Before that, I always had to play with my brothers. I had to sneak in his room and
okay.
play with his Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back toys, and get beat up for messing his stuff up or misplacing one of his weapons or whatever. So
So,
finally
what was
getting,
your first present? What was your first present?
oh my gosh, I was so spoiled back then. I got, well, for that Christmas, I remember getting the Ewok Village.
Oh,
I remember
wow.
getting
Yeah, yeah,
I got the Jabba playset, the throne playset, Deus, whatever. I got a speeder bike, and I probably got 10 figures. Like it was the best Christmas ever.
yeah. I can imagine.
It
That
was
is
awesome.
wow,
Yeah,
wow.
it was
I
great.
mean,
So I was, mhm.
it's such a great time, wasn't it? I mean, you see the films and then you get the figures and stuff like that. I mean, Jedi had some great like that. I mean, that um Ewok Village, absolutely outstanding. I
Oh
just thought
yeah,
it was
it was
absolutely
awesome.
brilliant. And then the speeder bike as well, you could push the button and the thing ejected and
Yep.
come to pieces. You had the ATST, Jabba's playset. I mean, just how cool was that? I mean, so that was the start of your Star Wars journey with your collecting, then I guess.
Yeah, but at 6 years old, with all that, seeing the films and then getting all my own Star Wars toys, I mean, I
Yeah,
was hooked for life at that point.
yeah.
Yeah.
At the age of 6, when you went to go and I mean, because you'd already seen Star Wars, and then you went to see Empire, and you said that kind of like exceeded Star Wars, and you like that better. At that age, do you feel that it was the action, the lightsabers, the characters, the ships that you were more into than the story? Did you pick the story up at all, or was that sort of like didn't quite sink in. It was just the characters and stuff like that that you liked and what you'd seen on screen.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's a little bit difficult to answer just because I can't remember my mindset at the time. I
Yeah,
would probably say it was just the action, and then probably I just remember loving Yoda. Like he was really
yeah,
cool and funny at times. When you first meet him, he's really silly
yeah.
and kind of funny. Um, and just the whole Luke versus Vader lightsaber battle, and then finding out Vader was Luke's father. I think it was all of that. But um, what was really cool, I think, about Empire is we're so used to seeing the big battles. You have to build up
Yeah.
to that usually, but I mean, Empire just kicked it off with one of the
Yeah,
greatest
yeah,
fictional battles ever with the Hoth
yeah,
battle. I mean, you were just
yeah, yeah.
we're like, okay, here we go. All right, what is going on? You're already in this amazing battle, and I just remember the AT-ATs coming and just being like, what is that? You like
I
it
know
was
how
just
could I know it was cool,
it
wasn't
was
it?
so
Yeah, yeah.
cool. Yeah, just it was just great. Yeah.
I mean, with you say with Yoda being silly and stuff like that, I mean, he was, but I don't think it was OTT. I think they done it in
No,
such a
no,
way, you know.
yeah, he was like purposely being a little bit, he was kind of testing Luke right at that point,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
because he didn't reveal himself yet. So he was kind
yeah.
of acting a way that he wouldn't maybe normally act.
Mm,
But just to him with the interaction with R2 and taking
yeah.
taking
But I
Luke's
mean,
food and all that. That was great.
it's like Irvin Kershner said, you know, he wanted he wanted it to be like have amusing parts, but he didn't want it to be a comedy. He wanted
Right.
it to have romantic parts, but he didn't want it to be like a romantic kind of film. He didn't want it to be all mushy and stuff like that. So I think Irving Kershner probably out of the three, George Lucas who did Star Wars, and then Richard Marquand that did Jedi. I think Kershner was probably told. I think he directed the better. I think he was the better director out of the three of them. I think what he had to do because originally he turned it down. He didn't want to do Empire Strikes Back because he said Star Wars has already been done. How can you beat that? Empire was bigger on a bigger scale, wasn't it? The sets, the designs, the character, the story development. I mean, how did you feel when Vader turned around and said, "I'm your father"? I mean, did you believe that? Did you think, "Hang on a minute, what's going on here"?
Uh, I think I was shocked, but I think I did. I could be wrong, but I think that I did suspect that maybe he was lying to
Yeah,
Luke at the time. Um, yeah, I think part of me thought that, and because I remember going into Jedi wondering if this was legit, and
yeah.
then it really being confirmed in Return of the Jedi that it was
Mm,
his. But that's part of the fun, right?
yeah.
Keep you guessing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they say the Sith sort of like manipulate people. They lie. They use the dark side to you know get to people and stuff like that, and they use all sorts of things to So maybe that was probably a way of thinking at the time. There's like, okay, well, he's lying here, isn't he? He's trying to get to Luke and trying to but I just think, the way they kept that secret and stuff like that and that reveal, I think that's probably got to be one of the greatest reveals of all time in movie history. I think personally for me,
Yeah, definitely. I think
absolutely awesome.
yep.
So then, Return of the Jedi finishes. Then they people call it the dark years where there wasn't much Star Wars at all. You mean you had the EU and stuff like that. I mean, was you into that at all? The Timothy Zahn novels, the comics.
Uh, yeah, my brother got me into the Zahn trilogy. Excuse me, the Thrawn trilogy. But I didn't really pick that up until those came out in the early '90s. I think '92 was the first one. Heir to the
Mm,
Empire came out in '92. And I guess I read it in probably about '95. I think I was probably a junior in high school, my third year in high school, and so yeah, that my brother told me about them, said they were good, so I checked them out, and that did help fill the void a little bit. When I
yeah,
read that, when I read Heir to the Empire, it really felt like Star Wars to me. I could picture it as I was reading, and I could picture it as a movie.
yeah,
And I always wanted them to make that trilogy as the sequel trilogy.
yeah.
But I know that's just very difficult because that those books only take place about 5 years after Jedi, and all the actors were just too old, and of course we didn't have the de-aging technology then, and even if they wanted to do it now, it would well, obviously it wouldn't work,
Yeah,
with all the
yeah,
actors, with Carrie Fisher passing, but either way, it just wouldn't have worked, I don't think.
yeah. So we get to that sort of like think that we get to that kind of conversation in a bit. So after Return of the Jedi, I mean, that was the last film in 1983. Did you think that when Jedi ended, that was it as far as Star Wars movies were concerned? Did you think that there was going to be any more?
Um, not I think then I felt like maybe there would be,
Yeah,
but by the time I was getting older into the, early '90s, I think I had given up hope,
yeah,
that there would be, the films again. Um, so yeah, I had just kinda given up, and it wasn't till when they first started announcing that they were gonna make, the prequels,
yeah,
um, then I was just so excited. I mean,
yeah.
the level of my excitement was through the roof, anticipation for that film, so,
So you, I mean,
which was
you had quite high expectations then with the prequels.
way too high. If only I could go back in time and
Yeah.
tell myself, "Hey, Kirby Enthusiasm, man, it may not be as great as you're hoping." But,
Was
yeah,
it?
I just
In your opinion, was it? Was episode when episode 1 came out, you saw it, did you think it was as good as it did you know?
no, no,
Wow,
I was disappointed,
really?
because because I had just built up too much expectation. I couldn't wait for that thing to come out. I was just counting the days, and, I set the bar too high in my mind of what it was gonna
Yeah,
be. I've grown to like it. I like the Phantom Menace now, but
yeah,
when I saw it, I don't know. I was just disappointed. I didn't understand Jar Jar. Just didn't like that. I don't know, man. And the politics and stuff. I really loved the pod racing scene, and I loved the duel of the fates at the end.
yeah, yeah,
And those are still two just amazing scenes. And
yeah,
so that was the only thing for me that made the film good, at all at the time. At the time,
yeah.
again,
But, I
I've
mean,
grown to like it a lot
you
more.
can look back now and think, "Okay, yeah, I understand the political side of the film more," because but then you see episodes 2 and 3, it
Yeah,
kind of yeah,
yeah. When you put the whole thing together, it 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 flows fine. It made more sense.
yeah,
Like I said, it was just disappointing at the time because I don't know what they could have done. I don't know. I think I'd set the bar so high that no matter what they would have done, I probably would have been a little bit disappointed.
yeah.
So that was
Do you think that's the problem with Star Wars fans then? They set the bar too high with these things because of the originals. I mean, you know, I think it's a lot of people our age and our generation that grew up with the original trilogy. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. It was that good. It was that good. It was lightning in a bottle. It was magic. You know, you come out of the cinema or you watch that film and it makes you just feel absolutely, it makes you feel brilliant. I love the feeling of watching a Star Wars movie, you know, the original trilogy. And do you think it's fans that of our generation that really we do set the bar too high when it comes to other kinds of Star Wars because we kind of get the feeling that it won't be as good as the original trilogy?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. Um, we've been fed some good stuff before.
Yeah, yeah,
The Clone Wars, for example, was an excellent show overall.
yeah,
I remember it started off a little rocky. A lot of us didn't know about the whole Snips and Sky Guy
yeah.
stuff. Kind of rubbed people the wrong way. But then that show really found itself. It was
Yeah,
really well done, and I think, I don't know, but I think the majority of us old school OT fans eventually embraced the Clone Wars show. May not be our
yeah,
favorite, it maybe nowhere near the OT, but for us, but I think a lot of us enjoyed it. And then, the man when Mandalorian came out, first live action show, it was a hit. I mean, and it
yeah,
and it
yeah,
really,
yeah,
it really scratched that itch for a lot of our the OT fans. There was a lot of Easter. I want to say Easter eggs, but it was done really well.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was like fan service done right. I guess is a good way to put it for Mandalorian season 1
yeah.
and
But I mean, the
season 2.
storytelling was good. The
Yeah,
writing was good. The overall production was really, really good. And
yeah.
and look, you can still. I mean, you didn't have to watch the original trilogy to watch this and like it. You could have just, not watched the original trilogy, but then you could see this. It was Star Wars from start to finish. The way they did it, the storytelling. That's all. It was just all. It was superb. And going back to the Clone Wars, for me, and I know a few other people are feeling the same way. With the Clone Wars, it made me appreciate the prequels that much more. I liked the clones. It was great seeing those clones and stuff like that, and looking at the backstories because you got more backstory on what's his name, Darth Tyrannus, Count Dooku, and stuff like that. You saw Sarge Ventress. You saw these characters that you saw briefly in episodes like 2 and 3, and then they gave him more backstory, and I really appreciated that, and I really like that, and I just thought some of the storytelling and was some of the probably the best storytelling that in Star Wars.
That's a great point, Stu. It really did improve my enjoyment of the prequels,
Yeah,
having all that more substance. We were given in the Clone Wars. And one thing I've always kind of complained about the prequels, or that I would have preferred, is that they had started episode 1 be what episode 2 was leading up to the Clone Wars,
yeah,
and skip the whole Anakin as a child thing, and then
yeah,
episode 2 be right in the middle of the Clone Wars. So be all Clone Wars
yeah,
plot right
yeah,
dead set in the middle of Clone Wars, and then let episode 3 be the end of the Clone Wars like it was.
yeah.
So I think the animated series kind of helped uh, fulfill that by giving us all that substance during the
Definitely,
Clone Wars. Because it was
definitely.
kind of weird, wasn't it? There was this big deal, but it just starts at the end of episode 2, and then it ends at the beginning of episode 3. So you really don't get the Clone Wars per se,
Yeah,
not very much
yeah.
at least. So.
No. Well, I think the main focus was really, I guess, on Anakin Skywalker, wasn't it? It is the Skywalker saga. So I think as much as Anakin was a big part in the Clone Wars, it did sort of like venture off into different people's stories, like the clones themselves, and you see it from their point of view and stuff like that. And I just thought it was really well done. There's a lot of thought and time sort of like gone into it. And some of the arcs, right, I just thought were incredible.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, the one where they fake Obi-Wan's death, and he then disguises himself as that bounty hunter. And at the end of it, when Anakin finds out, he's like thinking, "Well, hang on a minute, they're lying to me here. Why can't they trust me to?" Do you know what I mean? And it's those little things that sort of like you can understand him in Episode 3 with the Revenge of the Sith, why he's sort of like losing faith with the Jedi and stuff like
Yeah.
that because he's being kept out of the loop. And then of course you've got Palpatine manipulating the situation, which I just think is absolutely incredible. They don't trust you. They think you're dangerous and all that sort of stuff. And it just how it works out and the storytelling and the thought behind it, I just think it's absolutely incredible. I really do, and it's absolutely awesome. So then you've had the prequels, and then again there's a massive, well, it seemed like a massive gap, a few years without Star Wars. Then they announced the sequels. How did you feel about that?
I was excited. I I,
Yeah,
I was cautiously optimistic, but I was optimistic, and I was just glad that it was going to get this new breath of life. And I at the time I thought it made sense that Disney take over. It's family entertainment. It's always been a family uh, entertainment, and so I
yeah,
think at the time it made a lot of sense to me that Disney was going to be the one to take over, and they were certainly big enough, obviously,
mm,
to take
yeah,
over. So I had no issues with it at the time, and when Force Awakens came out, I'll be honest, I actually enjoyed myself watching it. I had a few issues with it, but nothing too major.
yeah.
and I just enjoyed it. I thought, at the time, the prequels were still kind of taking a bit some hits on, people were still kind of dogging it for being too political, being a little bit boring at times. And so Force Awakens veered away from any of that. It just went back to
Yeah.
just action. I mean, it had a lot of action. It really did. And it
Mm.
had very good I really liked the chemistry between the main characters in The Force Awakens,
Yeah.
with Finn and Ray and um the other people. But I thought it was yeah, I enjoyed it. Like I said, there's a few issues I had with it. I didn't know how I felt about them killing Han Solo at the end of it. I had
Yeah.
mixed feelings about that. But overall I was kind of like, well, that's kind of what Star Wars is. There's always something a little bit shocking that happens. And
Mm.
um Harrison Ford always felt like Solo should
Yeah,
be
yeah,
killed.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
figured maybe he that was his request. Like maybe he told him, "I'll do it if you kill me off."
yeah,
And maybe that's
yeah.
true. I don't know. I'm just that's just a theory
Well,
of
no,
mine. But
I
yeah,
kind of I'm with you on that. I think that's,
yeah.
that's the only way they could get him back. Because
So
he wanted him to die in Return of the Jedi, didn't he? He wanted his character to die
yeah,
from Return of the Jedi, but
yep,
George wasn't gonna have any of it.
yeah. And so and that film left you with one. There was so many directions it could go, and
Yeah,
there was.
yeah,
You remember there was a lot of excitement about what was going to happen next after that
yeah,
film.
yeah, yeah.
And then Rogue One came out, and man, I loved Rogue One so much.
Yeah, that was a great film.
So much.
Absolute
I
great film.
really liked Rogue One, and so I was like, man, I guess I remember thinking, I guess Star Wars is in good hands
Yeah,
after
yeah.
those two. And I was just so excited about Last Jedi, and then we know what happened there. Last Jedi came out,
Unfortunately, yeah,
and
yeah,
I remember the moment. I think it was the moment when Luke tossed that lightsaber over his shoulder, like he just threw it on the ground.
yeah.
So it was so awkward, and I just remember getting a weird kind of feeling, sick, kind of a sick feeling in my stomach when that happened. Like, what?
Mm.
We waited so long to see what's gonna happen. She hands over the
Yeah,
lightsaber. What's he gonna do? And
yeah.
he just goes, I hated
Well, I
that.
mean, especially the way they ended The Force Awakens, where she was on act 2 and she's handing the lightsaber out to Luke, and he turns around,
Yeah,
he takes his
he looks so
like, he
cool.
take
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and he just gives her
like
that look, and I'm just think and then it ends, I'm like, "Is that it?
yeah,
Oh, we
yeah,
gotta wait another 2 years or whatever it is to see what
yeah.
happens." But, I mean, where it lost me, The Last Jedi was the beginning, the mum jokes with General Hux. I mean, it
Oh
just made it
yeah,
out
that
to
was
be a
bad
complete
too. That was right. That was
blank. I
first,
mean,
right? That came
yeah, and
first.
I was just like, "What are they doing?" And then, Poe's going, "Oh, I'll just wait for your mum. I'll just wait for you," and he's going,
Yeah,
"What was that all about?" I was like,
yeah, that
"No
was.
way." So that kinda lost me, and I thought, if that's gonna be like this all
Mhm.
the way through, then it's gonna be horrendous. And then you see Luke and think, "Brilliant, he's gonna be," and then he, like you say, launches it. You just think, "Oh, what the," and
Yeah,
yeah,
that was
yeah, it's,
bad. Yeah.
should we take a minute silent just have a minute silence, but, yeah. But, okay, so The Last Jedi, kind of car crashed in a lot of people's opinion. Then, um, The Rise of Skywalker comes out. I mean, what were your hopes and expectations for that after The Last Jedi? Well, no, don't forget we had Solo before that as well, didn't we? So we had Solo come out, and
Yeah, we had Solo. I actually enjoyed Solo.
yeah, I
Uh,
didn't mind it. I thought it was all right.
it was tough to get over Harrison not playing him,
Yep.
because Harrison Ford is Solo, and I thought Aldrich, whatever his name is, he did a great job of embodying the character. But he's just not Harrison. And
No, no.
if you can get over that, I thought it was a good, fun film. I didn't have any
Yeah,
issues with it really.
yeah.
So yeah, I kind of liked
I would
it.
have liked to have
I think
seen more. I would have liked to have seen more, especially with
I am
like the,
I'm one
the
of those people
um,
that would have
yeah,
enjoyed a sequel,
yeah,
to
especially with
see how
Kira
he.
and working with Darth Maul.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They really, they teased that at the end.
Yeah.
I was down for a Solo 2, but there's just no way it was gonna happen. It just
No,
didn't
no.
do well enough, and it
I
was
I
the
think I
it was
think
a
that's
victim of
yeah, it
it
was
was a victim
definitely
of
you're gonna
Last Jedi. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, agreed. I was gonna say the same thing. So then Solo happens, and then you get The Rise of Skywalker. So again, were you optimistic, or you kind of like a bit, where's this going after? that last film.
Unfortunately, I let myself get optimistic that JJ was gonna fix it, and,
Yeah.
I liked the trailer. I remember when they saw the trailer, a lot of people did, I think. I recall a lot of
Yeah,
people getting
that was
excited
the
about it.
best part of it, the trailer.
It was yeah, the trailer was exciting, and so I let myself, get very optimistic, and, it had some it had some good parts, but it was just let's face it, it was kind of a hot mess. They were trying to JJ was trying to do too much. He was trying to correct stuff that Last Jedi kind of screwed up, and they were just all over the place in that film. If you go back and watch it, it's like it's just kind of all over the place, and
Well, we know, yeah.
it's just yeah,
Yeah.
it was not good. I'm not sure if it's worse than Last Jedi. I think Last Jedi was more structured and um, maybe uh, uh, more well made, if that makes any sense. It's just I
Mm,
don't like what he did, but as far as a film and how it was
yeah.
directed and the plot flowed, it was probably structurally a better movie. Just didn't like, again, what happens in the movie. But
Mm.
yeah, the Rise of Skywalker was just, oh my
So with
gosh.
those last with the sequels then, where would you point the finger of blame? Is it the directors? Is it Lucasfilm? Is it Disney?
Uh, I would blame Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy. I think their biggest mistake was not writing out the entire story first.
Yeah.
They literally just wrote Force Awakens, then they brought in another director to write and direct the second film, and then they rejected what's his name had a script for Rise of Skywalker. They rejected that.
Was that Colin Trevorrow?
Yeah, yeah, and if you've, read that script or if you watch videos on that script, it would've I mean, it's easy to say this, I guess, but it seemed like it would have been a much better film. The story
Yeah.
was much better in my opinion. I mean, it's easy to say that, I guess, but, that was their biggest mistake. They didn't have a plot for the whole trilogy before they went into this thing,
Yeah.
and you could argue that probably George he didn't write the script for all three of the original trilogy either. But I think he had an outline at least. I think in his mind at least he had an idea, and at least
Yeah.
he wrote it all versus
Well,
having
with
three different.
with the original
Yeah,
trilogy, he wrote it all, and he said it was too because he wrote the prequels as
right.
well, but he said it was too big of to put into one movie,
That's
so he
true. Yeah, that's
stopped
right.
it
He
and put
did.
it as episode 4 first, and then started in the middle, and then because he didn't realize Star Wars was gonna be a huge success. No one did.
Yeah.
No one was interested,
Right.
and for what he did, and then to have the sequels come out and be well, not the sequels like Empire and Jedi to come out and just be just as huge and as popular, you know, I mean, do you feel that there was too long between the gaps between making the original trilogy, then going back to making the prequels, then going forward to do the sequels? Do you think the gaps were too big between the films? Like, I think it was 8, 10 years, wasn't it? Or 19 years, or however many years it was. No, hang on a minute. When was it? 99. So it would have been about 15, 16 years, maybe a bit more than that between the original trilogy and the prequels.
As far as you think, like hurting the film,
Yeah.
be- I don't know. I don't think so. I don't like that there was a gap just because we had to wait so long.
Yeah.
And I don't. Star Wars is so big. I don't think they lost fans because of the wait. I think everyone came back
Yeah.
immediately. Versus some other entertainments, um, like The Matrix, for example. You know, you wait. That's not the kind of movie you probably want to wait 15 years to make another sequel to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, So I don't know. I don't know that that weight hurt it, and I know George wanted to wait because he wanted the technology to advance further to make the
Yep.
prequels.
Yep. Jurassic Park
Actually,
happens in 93, 94, whenever it is. CGI
mhm,
becomes a big thing. Right, okay, I
yeah,
can make the films that I wanna make, and he did. And I've gotta say that is probably one of my only real criticisms, or if I look back now at the prequels. I mean, when you go into the actual story of it and the manipulation of Palpatine and the political side of things, I think it is probably it's very, very well written. The story's there. You've just got to have that little bit of concentration about you and pay attention to what's going on because it isn't all action. It isn't like the original trilogy, right? So it's going to be different. But the political side of things and the writing side of things, I think, were brilliant. But for me, I think the CGI I think was too much. I think there was an over reliance on CGI. Whereas you go to the sequels and they've gone back to the old school way of doing things like the sets and stuff like that, which I thought was brilliant. I really did
Yeah,
enjoy that. But then they did that, but they forfeited the story and the structure of the films. So
yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's they kind of like balanced out and they, you know,
yeah. I actually thought the sequel trilogy balanced the combination of CGI and traditional special
yeah,
effects perfectly. They did it
yeah,
very well. So,
yeah,
bravo. The poor people that work so hard on the special effects, and they just kind of get roped in with everybody else. So getting poo pooed is not a very good films.
yeah.
But no, they did it well, and you're right. Especially with maybe Attack of the Clones may have been the worst as far as overuse of
Yeah,
CGI. I mean, every
without
scene they
yeah,
did was in a room with a blue screen behind them, and
yeah,
it
yeah.
just felt like at times, even back then, that they were in the middle of a cartoon almost,
Do you
running
know what?
around.
You're absolutely spot on. It was like a feature length animated movie, wasn't it? Something out like the Clone Wars animated series. You know,
Yeah.
it, I like the Clone Troopers. I mean, like I say, because of the Clone Wars, I got a massive appreciation for them. I think the great designs. I think the figures are awesome, and I loved a lot of the characters. You know, like Rex and Cody and stuff like that. You get a lot of their backstories as well. But then when you see someone in an actual stormtrooper suit, like you did in the original trilogy, and even the the sequel trilogy with the First Order stormtroopers, I was like, wow, you've got actual people in costumes, and that made it look so much more realistic, more lived in. There was not one guy that was dressed in a clone armor suit. It was all CGI, and it just, it's a shame. It really is a
Yeah,
shame.
yeah.
But
And I liked
there you
Attack
are.
of the Clones, by the way. I actually liked Attack of the Clones a lot when I
Did you?
saw it, but it that was the only thing I didn't like, about it was just the overuse. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
lie. I didn't like the I like sand, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
No,
unfortunately,
no. I mean,
we talked about, we talked about the ride, and I agree with you that the stories George wrote in the prequels was overall very well done, but let's face it, George is not too great at dialogue. He
no,
he
no. I
really
mean,
should have
some of
had
it was
somebody help
cheesy
him
as
out.
hell. Yeah.
Like, he should have just done the outline of the story. This is what's gonna happen, and then let someone
Yeah.
write the dialogue for him,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
some of that dialogue between, Anakin and Padme is just atrocious.
Well, it was, but I mean, look, listen, my thinking behind that is because he always wanted Star Wars to be like your Saturday matinee sort of like sci-fi movie, like your Flash Gordon or who else was it? Was it
Buck
yeah, it was Flash
Rogers.
Gordon, wasn't it? And something like that. So it was very cheesy, the original trilogy. It really was. I mean, some of the lines that they said in that was pretty bloody hell. Who says that kind of stuff and what have you. So that worked back then, back in the 70s, late 70s,
Yeah,
early
that's
80s. That
fair, it
that kind
did.
of dialogue worked back then. But then to have it,
That
that's what
yeah.
I'm saying. Do you think that the film suffered because he wanted that same kind of dialogue, but times had changed, the way movies had changed, the way people thought had changed, acting had changed dramatically since, the 80s. And I kind of feel it was maybe a little bit out of its time. Do you know what I mean?
I think it was
Cheesiness didn't work. It wasn't appreciated as much.
yeah, well, and I didn't mind the dialogue in the original trilogy, but I think it's the context of the scenes, you know, like banter between a cocky Han Solo and a tough Princess Leia, very strong
Yeah.
Princess Leia is different than just two people who are like Anakin and Padme just falling in love in just a more serious traditional sense, I
Well,
guess.
yeah, I know. True, true. I mean, that
And
was
then
a
the
bit
politics, and
arbitrary.
then trying to explain the politics in dialogue. You didn't really have that in the original trilogy. And that's just hard to make interesting, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I
like you
see.
say, we
Yeah,
we can appreciate it now. We can appreciate the prequels now for sure.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so with everything that was in Star Wars, the action, the the music, the sound, the story. What was it about Star Wars that really stood out for you?
I think it was it's the combination of the vehicle design, just amazing, really cool vehicles, and the variety of aliens. You never know what you're going to see in these things and what they're going
Yeah,
to do, and then throwing in a little bit of the Jedi and the lightsabers. You know, let's face it,
yeah,
lightsaber is probably the coolest weapon ever made for film. I think it's the combination of all that, and then you throw in the John Williams score to really
yeah,
bring it home. It was just so original, you know. And I talked about this with Martin and Adam Long. Is that one thing I really liked about it was how everything's not perfectly clean in the Star Wars world. It's kind of a bit
yeah.
dirty and a bit worn down, and I just thought that gave it a lot of character.
Mm. Well, it was certainly dirty and grungy in the original trilogy. They kind of cleaned things up for the prequels because it was a more sophisticated kind of time. Do you know what I mean? It was like like the Nubian ships, the starship and what they call the starfighters, the Nubian starfighters and stuff like that. They were very sort of like quite clean looking and stuff like that. But that's what I liked about the set designs and the actual physical things that you can see on film. It give it that really lived in look, and I've seen it on a couple of episodes before as well. I mean, nothing looked like Earth, even though it was filmed. Well, obviously, because it ain't going to be filmed anywhere else, is it? Not going to be filmed on another planet, is it? Stupid thing to say, but you know what I mean. It was like filmed in Norway, but it didn't look like Norway. It looked like a nice planet from a distant galaxy far away.
Right.
We know it was like in the redwood forest of California, but it wasn't. It was Endor because that's how it was made. Do you know what I mean? Tatooine was in Tunisia, but it didn't look like Tunisia. It just looked like some desert planet in the far reaches of space on the outer rims of the galaxy. And that's what I liked about it, how they did that kind of stuff and made you believe that these were totally different worlds that we were visiting. And I just kind of loved all that sort of stuff. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, Stu. Let me close my door one second.
Okay,
Came home early. They're being loud. Sorry about that.
that's okay. That's okay. I'll cut this
Okay.
bit out. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Crack on.
How important is story to you within the Star Wars universe?
How important is what? Say it again.
Story to you within Star Wars
Oh,
universe?
oh, it's everything. It it doesn't work if you just throw a bunch of special effects and alien creatures and battles if you don't have a story to pull it all
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
So yeah, it's extremely important, and I think well, we probably don't want to get off into negative speak, but I think that's what's hurting with some of the recent shows is the
yeah.
lack of a good story.
Yeah. When did you start picking up more on the story? Because you mean you kind of seem the guy that's seen Star Wars and the original trilogy and probably the prequels a hell of a lot. So when did you start really taking notice of the story other than just all the action and the characters and stuff?
Um, I guess probably not till I got a little bit older, maybe in my late teen years. I remember going back and watching Empire when I was in my teens and picking up way more stuff
Yeah,
uh, uh, than I than I did when I was little, and just really appreciating it more. Um, there's just so many nuances with the characters going on in Empire Strikes Back, and
yeah,
um, it's maybe a little bit off topic, but one thing I really love about Star Wars is when you have it's classic good versus evil, but then you always
yeah,
got a mixture of characters that are a bit ambiguously moral. Um, like Han, I guess you could say. You know, he's a scoundrel, and so
yeah, yeah,
he's not the um, knight in shining armor kind of guy. This is a guy that's probably done some bad things from time to time, right? So
yeah, yeah,
we saw him shoot shoot his mentor in Solo, for instance.
I've got to say, I was surprised at that.
Yeah, I thought it was great,
So
but
does
yeah, it
that
was
tie in with the
surprising.
Han shot first?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started on that special edition scene. That was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah,
That was so
yeah.
ridiculous. I don't know what George was thinking with that.
Well, again, it was the fact that the modern technology was there. He wanted to make the film because he always said and confessed that he was disappointed with how the cantina scene turned out. Now, listen, I loved it the way it was. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. You know, maybe it wasn't as grand as what he wanted it to be, but it did what it needed to do. And because of the modern technology that he put into it, the mix wasn't quite there. I don't feel. I don't think they quite got that mix right between the modern technology and the original puppetry and the costumes they had. So that kind of
Yeah,
and to be fair, you know, with the Jabba the Hutt scene, it would have been great to see him, but was it necessary? I mean, it was the same conversation Han had with Greedo a few minutes before, and he's having the same conversation with Jabba. I think they could have done well to have cut that out. I mean, there's nothing worse than him going around and going over it. And I know
yeah.
it's supposed to be amusing and for kids and stuff like that, but it just when I saw that because I saw it at the theater and I was like,
Mhm.
what are they doing? Why?
Yeah.
Why, you know, you don't clean the film up by all means, you know.
Yes.
But some of the purists might be thinking, well, no, leave it as it is. Don't touch it at all. You know, keep it grainy and stuff like that. But you know, things progress. The quality of film is better in the 4K and the 8K and stuff like that. So I don't know. They could have. I mean, maybe they should have just cleaned the films up and left them as they are, or whatever. But there you go. Um, Moving on, how important do you think the older generation of Star Wars fans are to the Star Wars franchise? And when I say older generation, I mean people like me and you, because well, you're not old, but you're older generation.
Uh, Very important. Not the most, maybe not. I think it takes a balance of
Yeah,
the original love and new fans. I think it needs an equal balance.
absolutely.
So I yeah, definitely needs an equal balance. But yeah, very important. I mean, he didn't have us. I don't think Star Wars would survive just on the newer fans. I
No,
really don't. Not
no.
I really don't. I think even the success of the Clone Wars depended a little bit on our generation checking it out as well. If it was just the kids watching it,
Yeah,
I don't think it would be what it was.
yeah. I mean, people have said if you go to these conventions, like whether it's Star Wars Celebration or you go to like Echo Live that we have in the UK, and you know they've said if you take out every middle-aged man that grew up with the original trilogy or or fan, it could be like male or female, you take them out of it and there's going to be hardly anybody in those halls.
Yeah, yeah, I saw it. Gary Moore and Brad and I were at ICCC.
Yeah,
It was probably about 80% middle-aged people
yeah,
in that
yeah,
convention. Now that being said, I think we're seeing a very strong following for the second generation that came up with the prequels.
yeah,
Uh, they're very active in the community. They're very passionate about the prequels and the Clone Wars, and so
yeah,
I think Star Wars is in good hands with those people sort of taking the reins as we get to be just too old to care
yeah,
or too old to do
yeah.
anything anymore to be
But
active.
you know the reason I'm asking this question is because yes, it's important for Star Wars as a franchise to bring in a new fan base. I totally get that. I don't have an issue with that. But don't do it at the expense of the older generation. Don't
Yeah,
tell the older generation are toxic fans because they don't like a certain something.
yeah, yeah,
That's you don't gain fans like that. You're just alienating the fans. You're causing issues. You know you're basically adding flames to or fuel to the fire. You know that you don't need not Hasbro, Lucasfilm coming out and saying Kathleen Kennedy and whoever to come out and attack the older generation of fans because they don't like a certain something. Well, we've said it many times before, and everybody says the same thing. We didn't like it simply because the story wasn't good enough. It was below par. It was
yeah,
awful, and and these are valid reasons. And Star Wars is should be for everybody, not just a certain group of people. It shouldn't be singled out to a certain, like Star Wars is for everybody, and I just think it's such a shame, and I don't think the fans help because you get the older fans getting called certain names, and they're going to retaliate and say, "Well, hang on a minute, don't call me that," blah 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 blah. And this is all caused because of people that have come out and just attack the fans. So then the people that do like certain things, they're going to jump on board with that. Well, if they can do it, Lucasfilm, we're going to attack these guys and call them names as well because that's what they've called them. It doesn't make
Y-
sense. It just don't get
Yeah,
it.
you're exactly right, and that was, I think, the most disappointing to me is that you had actual Lucasfilm personnel and
Yeah,
actors involved taking part in that, and it's absolutely ridiculous to accuse us of being afraid of a strong female character or a female lead when we grew up with Princess Leia. I mean, it doesn't get
yeah,
stronger than Leia. She was taking charge of all the guys in the
yeah,
room.
yeah, yeah,
They were running around. They didn't know what they were doing. T- she was straightening them out.
yeah,
She was strong and tough, and we loved her.
yeah, yeah.
We weren't offended by that.
Not
Um,
at all.
and so
Not at all.
it's ridiculous to just blow that off as that's not counting. And then I think a lot of the original trilogy fans liked Rogue One, and you had a lead female character in that.
Yeah, yeah.
It did
Well,
well. It was a good story.
Amidala, Amidala, she was a queen at the age of
Amidala
40.
was,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
great. Another strong female lead. We had no issues with that. So it was ridiculous to hint that we're rejecting some of these shows because of a female lead.
but what I don't
And
understand is Kathleen Kennedy was part of that original trilogy. She was on the
yeah,
production team. How
yeah,
can she all of a sudden turn around and say that when, that we never had an issue with Princess Leia?
right,
I mean, look, listen, I mean, even with the newer stuff, you've got like Ahsoka Tano. I mean, she was an animated character to start with, but
right.
because
There you
she was
go.
so well accepted and so well received, they've made her a live action character now. And Rosario
Right,
Dawson's doing a fantastic job with her. You've got
right.
Katie Sackhoff reprising her role as an animated character in real life with Bo Katan. You've got Fennec Shand. You had Cara Dune. She was a great, strong
Yeah,
female character. And
yeah.
then Disney get rid of
Literally.
her. Do you know what I mean? They get rid of her. And
Yeah,
it just, and this is what annoys me. And this is why I think so much that they are pushing an agenda. Because we've never had an issue before. Why all of a sudden now have we had an issue? Why is there an issue with these characters? Because they're not well written characters. There's no character development with these characters.
yeah,
Take a look at yourselves and but they don't. They're so tunnel visioned, and that's the thing. And look, listen, I'm not knocking anybody as who likes the acolyte. I mean, you're free to like what you like, and I don't have an issue with that. I respect that. Please, for the love of God, respect the fact that we don't like it for these reasons. It's got nothing to do with race. It's got nothing to do with sexism. It's got nothing to do with homophobia. All it's got to do with is poor storytelling and poor acting and poor overall direction. It's as simple as that.
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's unfortunate that it turned into that, and they
Yeah,
used that as an excuse
yeah.
to cover up the fact that it was just poorly written script and bad editing, bad character development.
It's like slopey shoulders. Well, it's not our fault. Let's just brush it off onto the fans. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
no one takes responsibility these days. Right. So, well, basically, I've asked question 5. So I'm going to ask question 6. How important is it for Star Wars to be inclusive?
It's very important to be inclusive. Um, y- you want the Star Wars universe, in my opinion, should reflect the world we live in, and so I think you should see diversity in Star Wars, but at the same time, I feel like we've always had diversity in Star Wars.
Yeah,
Um, it doesn't mean you need to manipulate the story or change a character or force a character to be someone maybe they don't need to be just
yeah,
to push that. Just let it be. It needs to be organic, right?
yeah,
Um, it, I just feel like if you don't make that your top priority, it should just come naturally with the Star Wars
yeah,
universe to be
yeah,
diverse. So yeah, it's important, but it doesn't need to be written around that, if that makes sense.
That shouldn't be the focal point of the
Shouldn't be the
story.
focal
What you're
point.
saying. Yeah,
S
yeah. I mean, listen, Star Wars has always had, and every movie for that matter, has always had real world issues implanted in the story. Star Wars hasn't been any different. But what George Lucas did, and I found him very clever for doing this, is he did take events, or not events, but he took real life issues and political issues, and he put them into Star Wars, but he made them fit within that Star Wars universe. So it didn't seem out of place because you think, okay, well, this has happened in a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But it's believable because it wasn't although it was the focal point, the way it was written into the story was very clever. It was very subtle how he did it. And you believed that these issues were happening, even though they were happening like in real life, you didn't think that they were happening in real life because the way it was written in and incorporated into the story. And I don't know if you agree with that at all, or
No, definitely, yeah. No, you can definitely it definitely parallels, historical events in
but
our
it didn't
world.
seem pushed, is what I'm trying to get to. It didn't
No.
seem like a forced, right, this is what's happening. This is what happened in Vietnam. This is what happened in this war and stuff like that. And he's just blended it in nicely to fit his
Yeah.
narrative and his story, which I think
You
was
never
very well done.
Yeah, when you're watching Star Wars, you don't at any point think, "Oh, so he feels this way about some real event we're dealing with in our real
Yeah,
world." It's
yeah,
supposed to be an escape, right? So we don't need to be reminded about what we're dealing with in our real world. We're trying to get away from that, right?
yeah,
So that's what, doesn't work when you clearly try to make
yeah,
a statement, in your script.
yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's just so on the nose, it's ridiculous. It just Yeah, you said it perfectly. I mean, it can be blended in there's a subtle way to do it where it's not like just in your face. This is how the director or the writer feels about something going on in our
Yeah, but
real
that's
world.
that's what we had. And look, listen, going back to the acolyte, because that is the focal point of the majority of the the shite that's going on within the fandom at the moment. It's just centered mainly around that one show. We know Leslie Headland. We know what kind of person she is, who she is, her beliefs. Right? That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with that. To put that in the story and it to be the forefront of it, now the gayest Star Wars ever. That why lead with that? The Force is female. Why lead with that? You don't need to push that. Star Wars is and has been for everybody. It always, why push those kind of agendas? Because then they turn and say, "Well, we're not pushing an agenda," but you clearly are. You clearly got the bloody arse because it hasn't worked out for you, and the viewings were rubbish. Do you know what I mean? It's again just a good writer will incorporate real life events, but do it in a subtle way that fits the universe, not just make it stand out like a sore thumb, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, it almost feels like when they started writing some of the stuff that they put up a list of boxes to check and said, okay, we've got to work this into the story, this into the story, this into the story, and then they wrote the story around that. That's what it feels like. We don't know that that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah,
Maybe they didn't come at it that way, but it certainly seems like it. So
yeah, yeah. But listen, it is what it is. I mean, we've got a lot of Star Wars coming out. We've got Skeleton Crew coming out
yeah.
soon this year. We've got season 2 of Andor. Um, so
For that.
what are your feelings for those? What are your expectations for those?
Well, I gotta tell you, I was a bit worried about Skeleton Crew. I've been a bit worried about it. I watched the new trailer came out yesterday, and I have
Yeah.
to say I enjoyed it. It looked fun. It was a bit awkward that they were playing Peter Schilling's Major Tom in the trailer. I've never heard a real world song put to Star Wars before and something official. So
Do
that was a
you
bit unusual,
Yeah,
but it worked, I guess, with the feel of the what they were trying to convey in the trailer, which is basically like Goonies and Star Wars, right?
yeah.
Um, so I thought it looked fun. I'm still a little bit cautious. my hope is that if anything, it's at least enjoyable for the kids, and maybe
Yeah, well, it is
get
for
some more
kids.
kids into Star Wars.
It
It is
it
for
is
kids, yeah.
definitely into kids. It's definitely aimed at kids. What I would say about that, Major Tom, is why? Why? It's a galaxy far, far away. Don't play recognizable tunes. Do you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
that kind of universe. We're not on Earth. We're in a galaxy far, far away. And when I hear things like that, and then when I see some of the scenes in it, like modern day, it's like some of those scenes look like they should have been in Star Trek. It was like, you know,
Yeah, like the
downtown LA
suburb.
somewhere or some suburb in the States, you know? We don't wanna it's for kids. It's for kids. So that's and Andor 2, I've got to say, I'm looking forward to that. I
Oh,
mean,
man, I
again,
can't
it
wait.
was season 1 I thought was brilliant. It was, again, very political, but I like the backstory of it. I like the way that the rebellion is starting to be formed and stuff like that, and seeing Mon Mothma in there and stuff like that, I think it's, brilliant.
And there's an example of really good writing
Yeah, yeah,
In Star Wars,
yeah.
and,
And I think someone said it before in one of the earlier episodes. When Disney get it right, they get it right. They do a great job, and they've done some great stuff. It's not all been shocking. Again, just my opinion, but every time they get something right, it's like they take 3 or 4 steps back and just do a real hash up of the next project that they do.
well, it's just like they're throwing everything they can on the wall to see what sticks, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
um
unfortunately, shit sticks, doesn't it? But a lot of the time. But
yeah.
but there you go. Right, we're top of the hour. Last question. Overall, what makes Star Wars great?
So what makes Star Wars great? It is a perfect combination of fantasy, adventure, well done amazing special effects, um, interesting characters, so many aliens, uh, the droids. I just have a special place in my heart for droids, and when you see a
Yeah,
bunch of droids walking around doing some of them doing silly things, some of them doing awesome things, uh, I just love it. I can't imagine Star Wars. You take out the droids completely, it's not Star Wars
yeah,
anymore to me.
yeah,
And then again, throwing in the music score that was just brilliant. It really makes you feel something. Um, you take away any of those main elements, and the thing is ruined. So it was just a perfect combination of all those things. Um, and The story, and I forgot to mention just the characters, the chemistry. You know, one
yeah.
thing we all loved about the original trilogy was the utter chemistry between Luke, Leia, Han, 3PO, Chewbacca. I don't know that that'll ever be beat as far as chemistry. I mean, they had lightning in a bottle when they cast
Absolutely,
those people.
absolutely.
So
But with when you say about the chemistry, would you say that the prequels had that kind of chemistry? Would you say the sequels had that kind of chemistry? I mean, you said the chemistry between them in the first one, The Force Awakens, was fairly good. Do you think
I
that
did.
carried on for the rest of, the Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker?
No, because they split them up. They took out Finn. I thought they did Finn very wrong, sending him off with Rose to Kento Bite. That whole side plot that really was kind of pointless in the end.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, no, they split them all up, and so no, we lost that chemistry. And I thought, I forgot I didn't mention it, but maybe one of my favorite parts of the Force Awakens was BB-8. I really loved that droid in that film, and I love the engineering behind the puppetry
yeah,
with that droid that
yeah, yeah,
they made in real life, and I just thought that was great, and I loved BB-8 in Force Awakens. Um, you know, the little bit of comedy in there, but then with Last Jedi and even Rise of Skywalker, I think they just went over the top with BB-8, and so it kind of turned me off. But
yeah,
I would say he was part of that chemistry as well in The Force Awakens. So
yeah,
yeah, I thought they nailed the chemistry aspect in that film, and then Ryan Johnson just kind of tore it all apart. And then again, Rise of Skywalker was too late; like they were just trying to piece together everything. So yeah, and then The prequel trilogy, yeah, I thought the chemistry was pretty decent between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Yeah,
I thought it was pretty good. I'm not sure about Padme and Anakin. Um, I thought it was a little bit awkward sometimes, to be honest with you.
yeah. Do you
I
think
think
that
it
was
was kind
awkward?
of hit and
Do
miss.
you think that was awkward? I know we're sort of like going over the over time here, but that's fine.
Sure.
Do you think it was awkward because the situations they were in, they weren't supposed to be in that kind of position? They weren't supposed to be feeling that way about each other?
Could be, yeah.
I'm just
Not
surmising a
to
guess. I'm just surmising here. I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
that may be part of it. I mean, and maybe that was the whole point. Um, she was this very serious politician, and
yeah,
he was a Jedi apprentice who's not supposed to have relationships.
yeah,
And so that may have been by design to be awkward, but I don't know. I think it was more of the dialogue that George wrote between the two that made it more awkward.
yeah.
Um, and let's face it, Hayden's acting skills back then weren't great. I think he's gotten better. But he's not
But then
on.
he didn't really get directed, did he? To be fair, he
No,
wasn't
yeah,
really.
to
I
be
mean, look,
that's right. Good
as a
point.
storyteller, George Lucas was great, but as a director, he wasn't the best, was
Yeah,
he? It was,
that's true. Because we all know Natalie Portman is a brilliant actress, and
yeah, yeah.
even she that wasn't her top of her game. She wasn't on top of her game in that one, and
I
it's
mean, and
yeah,
they were both quite young, weren't they? So they were inexperienced and stuff like that. I mean, Liam Neeson, I mean, he worked because he's a great actor. But I mean, I
yeah.
thought he did a great job. And Ian
He
McDermott, who
did good.
played Palpatine, I just thought he was
Oh
superb
yeah,
all the
he
way
was really
through.
good. Yeah, he was really good.
So, but I think there's that experience those two kind of lacked, and I think they
Sure,
needed a bit of guidance. Those two, really, to
agreed.
be fair.
Yeah, that's a good
But
point.
anyhow, that is it. That's come to the end of the chat. Brett, I just want to say a massive thank you. It's been absolutely fantastic chatting Star Wars with you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've loved hearing your thoughts and opinions. And just remember, people, they're just thoughts and opinions. They're not facts. Thoughts and opinions are allowed. Doesn't mean to say we're right. Doesn't mean to say we're wrong. Just respect the thoughts and opinions. Thank you. But yeah, really
Absolutely,
enjoyed it, mate.
absolutely, Stu. Always a pleasure to come on with you and talk Star Wars anytime.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you very much. And for those of you who have stayed to the end, whether you're watching it or whether you're listening to it, thank you very much. Take care, stay safe, and we shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.